Hello and welcome to Easy Bread Baking, a free app which will introduce you to the wonderful world of no-knead bread baking, a way of people with less experience to produce high-quality artisan bread which will delight both family and friends. You're looking at the main screen here. You'll notice two buttons. The one is the beginner's tutorial for people completely new to this area who would like a detailed illustrative description of how to bake bread, and the everyday recipe for those who would like a recipe that they could bake 2 or 3 times a week for regular bread supply for the family. But let's go down and have a look at the program itself. This is where the recipes are, extra advice and so on. When you first start the program, it's already got some standard defaults. We'll leave those in place and then adjust them later. We start with the soft sandwich loaf. This is your everyday loaf for producing sandwiches and toast. It's a perfect starting position. Now, the way the app works, the vast majority of the flour is assumed to be, in many of the recipes, a white baker's flour. However, you can substitute a proportion of an alternate flour. In this, and the way the software works, the app works, is it suggests a recommended percentage. So in the case of soft sandwich loaf, it's all baker's flour. So we scroll down, and there is your loaf size. In this case, is preset to medium, which produces 8 to 10 slices. Continuing down, it's got an illustration of the bread type you've chosen and a brief description of the type of bread. The recommended baking container, in this case, is a Pullman pan, which is a normal baking pan with a sliding top. That gives you the classic oblong sort of toast bread. Then comes the ingredients, and you notice it's both in weight and in volume with cups and teaspoons. My advice is the bigger items, so the flours and the water, you measure by weight. Far more accurate, and you only need a simple kitchen digital scales to do that. And then I tend to, with the yeast and salt, use a teaspoon, whatever the amounts are. There's a baker's percentage for those who want to follow that way of allowing you to scale up, scale down. There is a description of that further down in the program. Then you get a typical bread you expect to produce out of this recipe, a summary of the recipe itself, baking temperature and so on. A very critical thing here, and one that I'd highly recommend that you follow, is the target internal temperature. So it's very worthwhile getting an instant read thermometer if you don't have one, and checking the final temperature before you think you've finished baking, and if necessary continue if it's a little bit undercooked. Since doing that, I've consistently had cooked bread. Then comes the equipment. The equipment also includes a size, recommended size for this amount of baking you want to do. And you need to choose a mixing bowl, and the general advice is to choose something much larger than the dough size, because you can expect an expansion. If you're still a bit unsure of the actual mixing bowl size, there is a very detailed frequently asked questions section later, which I'll get into. And one of the items there is, what bowl size should I choose? Then comes the recipe. You can record some personal notes against the particular bread type. Your oven, for example, may need an extra 5 degrees Celsius. And you see the Save Notes button there. There is then a sample timetable. It's got a suggested start time based on the type of bread you've chosen, but you can choose any time you want and then do a reset timetable, and that gives you a new timing. You can also email the recipe to yourself and to friends if you want to. Then coming down again, we have from here on are very comprehensive extra information. No matter how much you follow the recipe, things will go wrong occasionally, whether it be to do with the flour you've used, the temperature of the oven, or you've just forgotten something or overestimated another ingredient. What I've tried to do here is list all the common problems you're likely to face, how you deal with them during the process if you can, and how you can avoid that as a problem coming up in the future. That's quite a long section, and then there's another very important section called FAQ, or frequently asked questions. And there's a wealth of information there on no knead breaking, which you can take your time to go through. So let's return back to the beginning again. Now we can go back up the same way, scroll back up, or there is a quick menu here where you can jump to a variety of the different areas. So we'll go home. And this time we'll do a couple of quick choices to show you how this side works. So in the bread, we could choose an alternate bread type, which you can see there. One of my favorites is the chewy rustic round loaf. So that's still got a brown outside, but not as heavy and as crunchy as the crunchy round loaf. And it's slightly chewier, very tasty. So if I choose that, it's now suggesting 20% of wholemeal. You can use rye, spelt, or one of the others. And in fact, the FAQ, which I mentioned earlier, goes through some of the alternate flours and the sort of adjustment you need to make for that. Loaf size, we can choose a different loaf size. So you might say I want large because I'm looking for a bigger amount for the family. Or you could choose a large because you've got a lunch coming up and you want to bake some bread for your family and friends. Now I've chosen a different bread type. Baking container is, in this case, the Dutch oven, very popular. Now, as you move down, you'll notice that the ingredients have changed. They're now a larger amount of ingredients, and there's also here a proportion of wholemeal flour as well. Again, I'd use the weights. And in this case, the baker's percentage is different. Now you've got a different description of the sort of bread you can expect. New set of baking instructions. Different equipment. In this case, it's suggesting a 24 centimetre Dutch oven. Dutch oven, by the way, is a wonderful way of doing no knead baking. Again, the recipe and so on. So let's just quickly go to the top and I'll show you the tutorial for those who are brand new to this area, would like a little bit more help. You'll notice that we're going for the white loaf again. There's the equipment you need, the amounts you need, some tips on the way, and it's full of pictures to help you. So thank you again for looking. This is a completely free app. We do not ask for any personal details. There will be advertising at the bottom. If you see ads that are relevant, we appreciate you clicking on those. That gives us support to continue the development of easy bread baking. Again, thank you and enjoy.